when it heard about this. How could we be sure that the human beings that had been created would not become a threat to us? For our own security, we told our scientists to keep these human beings in ignorance of any scientific knowledge. They were even told to make these people whom they had created believe that we were almighty gods, so as to be sure they would respect us.
Of every tree in the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for on that day you shall surely die. Genesis 2:17.
At the time, the human beings called these extraterrestrials Elohim, which in ancient Hebrew meant those who come from the sky. It's found in the original Bibles, but in more recent times was mistranslated by the word God. It's important to realize that this is a plural, the singular being Elohah. References to the Elohim can also be found in other ancient texts. For example, in the writings of the Hindu, Greek, Egyptian, and Amerindian civilizations. We can read even today about the many gods who had human emotions and who lived near or with these human beings. These gods talked to human beings and even had relations with them.
When our scientists created people like ourselves, opinion on our planet became divided. Could we trust human beings? But there was a group of scientists who had begun to deeply love the human beings they had made. They wished to give them scientific knowledge so that they would be able to communicate as equals. Their love grew so much that this group decided to educate some humans and reveal to them the truth that creators and created are exactly the same.
The serpent said unto the woman, Of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden you shall not surely die, for Elohim both know that in the day that you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods. Genesis 3:4.
In other words, you shall be as those you mistook for gods.
If you entered this laboratory, you would realize that we are just like you, and one day you too will create life. You are just another link in the chain. The eternal cycle of creation continues.
And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew they were naked. Genesis 3:7.
This quote doesn't refer to their physical nudity, but to intellectual nudity. They realized that they'd been kept away from knowledge.
Behold, man has become one of us, to know good and evil. Genesis 3:20.
How could God, supposedly immaterial, intangible, and almighty, have written, Behold, man has become one of us? There is another passage which shows that the Elohim were physical and human.
When men began to multiply and daughters were born unto them, the sons of Elohim saw that the daughters of man were fair, and they took wives of all they had chosen. Genesis 6:1.
A little further on, we read,
The sons of Elohim had intercourse with the daughters of men, and had children by them. Genesis 6:4.
There were numerous contacts between the Elohim and human beings, which are recorded in the Old Testament. Moses, for example, thought that the bush he saw was on fire, because he had never seen artificial lights before. In Exodus, Yahweh Elohim is always described as sitting in a pillar of cloud during the day, and in a bright light which shone the way at night. Strange behavior for an immaterial God. Some other examples of the contacts include Jacob's ladder to heaven, Jonah meeting the Elohim in the belly of a whale, and Ezekiel's vision of Yahweh Elohim sitting in wheels within wheels. In the Quran too, we find descriptions of physical contact between the Elohim and human beings. The Quran itself was dictated by Angel Gabriel to Muhammad, and in the night journey, it recounts how Angel Gabriel woke Muhammad up by pinching his toes, and took him to the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem in a flying craft. There he met Jesus and Moses, and was then taken up to the 7 heavens, where he met Allah himself, seated on a throne. As the Elohim progressed in their scientific understanding, they realized that the human beings they had created would one day mature into a humanity which itself could parent life on another planet. It takes 666 generations for humanity's scientific understanding to advance sufficiently to begin to create life synthetically. With such technology, it can also free its people from the obligation to work and solve all its problems, such as famine, pollution, and nuclear conflict. Humanity can become one integrated organism, a global brain living on planet Earth in harmony, ready to link up with the global brains in other parts of the universe.
But this can only happen if humanity succeeds in becoming peaceful. If it continues to be aggressive, it will destroy itself with its own technology. You can survive only if prejudice and intolerance are replaced by love and communication. This choice between destruction and world peace is not ours, it is yours. We will not help you survive if you are not peaceful. Humanity has to help itself and show that it is mature enough to take its place in the universe. That is why we decided to leave the Earth, so that humanity could progress by itself. But in the same way that parents guide their children, so we occasionally sent messengers to guide humanity along the path of maturity.
Buddha, Moses, Jesus, Mohamad, and all the prophets who started the major religions were people contacted by the Elohim. The word prophet comes from the Greek, which means the one who reveals. The prophets were given a revelation or message to give to humanity, adapted to the level of understanding at the time. Their role was to progressively educate humanity. For example, Buddha taught humanity many techniques for self-development, balance, and harmony. The prophets were also to leave traces of the Elohim, so that we'd be able to recognize them as our creators and fellow human beings when we had advanced enough to understand them.
The teachings of the Old Testament soon began to be distorted, so we decided to send another messenger.
For this, one of the Elohim made love with Mary, a woman of the earth. This is where the idea of the virgin birth came from. Mary herself had always maintained that the father of her child was not a man of the earth, but
born of an Elohah. John chapter 1, verse 13.
The Elohim guided a number of initiated people to Jesus' birth by a light in their craft. These were known as the 3 wise men. The child grew up, and when he became of age, he was initiated in the desert. When questioned where he'd been, Jesus answered,
"Why are you searching for me? Did you not know I was with my real father?"
When he was baptized,
the voice of Elohim came out of a cloud, which glided in bodily form down to him. Luke chapter 3, verse 22.